Assalamu alaikum audience. Today we are joined by Khadija Khan from Sydney. She is an expert in international affairs and geopolitics of the world. Her area of studies focus on the American politics specifically. Khadija, how are you?
But thank you, Ahmad. How are you today?
Alhamdulillah, good. Today, for my audience, we will be discussing what's going on in the America, because America has going through under a lot of stress and unrest. There are protests going on in America, and a lot of people in Pakistan and all over the globe doesn't know what is really going on in America. And I would like to know, Khadija, what's your views and how give us a sense of what is going on in America and why there are all over protests in different cities of America, and there are the lockdown have been imposed, national guards have been called, and police have been molested by the audience, by the crowds.
Yes,
Over
you're
to
right
you.
there. So there's marches, people marching on the roads. There's looting, widespread looting, vandalism of local businesses, of buildings. Police cars are being lit on fire. So and then there's been police as a return to the protesters, as an answer to the protesting. The police and the National Guard has been deployed and been using non-lethal weapons on the protesters as well. Why this is all happening in America? So on a Monday evening, there was police called at a scene, supposedly where a man had used a $20 counterfeit bill to purchase cigarettes. Just to shorten it, 17 minutes later, the man under investigation, he was lying flat face down on the concrete pavement, and a few minutes later, he was declared dead. This man didn't just die, he was murdered. He was a 46-year-old George Floyd, a Black American who had lost his job at a restaurant due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, Floyd's death, this murder, has actually triggered all of this crisis or anarchic sort of protest in America. It started from Minneapolis, it widespread to the states, all states in America, and eventually globally as well, including countries like Australia here as well. One of the officers, Derek Chauvin, he was at that time charged with second-degree murder, and the other three officers were charged with aiding and abetting in that murder at that time. There is bystanders videos which were on social media. There is CCTV camera footage from close by shops and restaurants. There is also audio from the police itself. And, overall, there was witnesses. This murder took place in broad daytime, in front of people, in front of witnesses who, like, if you listen to the actual call that took place from the store where the supposed $20 counterfeit bill was used, it was in the recording. You can hear that the caller said that George Floyd, was drunk as well, and when he returned to his car, in the CCTV footage, you see where the police takes him out of the car. He's taken out of the car. He's dragged out of the car. When they put handcuffs on him, he has shown no signs of aggression or resistance. The only time he resisted, when they were putting him in the car, he said he's claustrophobic. You can hear the witnesses say, and in the footage, he has not shown any signs of violence or aggression, even when they have put him onto the concrete pavement. He is telling them that he cannot breathe. The officers telling him to then get up and get in the car, and he's agreed. You can hear him say, okay, I will take, your knees on my neck. He said, I can't breathe. In those 5 minutes, he has said, I cannot breathe 15 times from what we can hear. So these protests were in the ones that have started in Minneapolis are due to this. The preliminary reports,
in solidarity with the
preliminary.
George Floyd. So you're
Yes,
saying this
exactly.
protest started
And
in
even with
solidarity?
the
Yes.
so this
Sorry,
that has actually
your voice
became,
was
it was
sorry,
the final
Khadija.
name.
Khadija, sorry, your voice was missing from them. Can you repeat? Could you please repeat your sentence?
Yes, so certainly, this that has actually become this that has become became a point of contention for Americans to gather. This is when the Black Lives Movement has started. It has got mobilized. The videos went viral. Violent actions which have been carried out by the police. These police, and this is not just with George Floyd's death. This has been going on for a long time. Police brutality, police violence, the injustice that gets carried out by the police, who enjoy this special privilege in America. And I mean that in a negative sense. They are involved in criminal activity. They enjoy using force and brutality against the people, especially, the so-called different people of other races, people of color. They do not serve justice as they should. So, this was just, like I said, the final nail in the coffin.
So, as Khadija, you were mentioning about the brutality, the brutal behavior of police, of American police. If I mention that these police is being trained by the Israeli forces in recent years, and these tactics doesn't resemble to the George Floyd, like George Floyd is murdered on the road. The Palestinians have been brutally murdered by brutally killed by the Israeli occupied forces of in Israel and occupied Palestine. So this brutality, the feeling of oppression in Americans against this brutality have raised a very rage against the police. If you see, if I may ask you, okay, how you see, what could be the other factors? Is there the only George Floyd's murder, or there could be other factors involved in that has lightened the fire on the roads? Would you please enlighten us on the other factors?
I certainly do agree with you that with the tactics that were used in George Floyd's murder, and then when we talk about oppression, there is a feeling of oppression. Out of the many factors involved, the feeling of oppression in Americans is one where people's standard of life, their way of life has declined in the recent years as well. The economy of America system has also declined. For example, if you talk about the Obama period, there was a lot of agreements signed. There was a lot of agreements signed with China. There was international markets were open, which the people of America were not very happy with, and the per capita income declined as well. Also, if we talk about recently with COVID-19 has also played a role, especially the way Trump and his administration have handled this pandemic. That is also a cause. That is also a factor of all of this, and this rage that people have against capitalism, and
And people,
fascist
I was
regimes
listening
as
to few, I
well.
was reading few articles on the internet. There, people were talking about the role of Democrats and response of Republicans, and in this time, how you see that the people of the anti-fascist movements, the different movements were going on in America, how anti-fascist movements has become the part of these protests, because you will see everybody is protesting. It's not like Black Lives Matter, the only the Native Americans or Anglo Africans are protesting on the roads. There are people who are really against the regimes. How you see these factors are colliding with each other, or these factors are their interests are converging?
Yeah, so like I was mentioning, Trump, if we talk about fascism, fascist regimes, Trump has actually emerged. People see Trump has emerged as a fascist president, and someone people of America are actually fed up with. They are fed up with the brutality of the police, the insensitive behavior of the president. You know, these are just a few of the many factors which were instigated by Floyd's murder and has become a symbolism of injustice. If we're talking about, you're right there when you mentioned it's not just with the Black Lives Movement. There's actually also, when I mentioned at the start, as well, people of color, as I mentioned. So, for example, it's just basic things that people are fed up with, and these things have been going on for a long time now. For example, you know, a Black man walks into an elevator, you know, people standing next to them are they clinch onto their bags. You know, if a person of color is crossing the road, the other people are going to cross the road. If they're just on their way, they're going to cross the road just to avoid crossing paths with them. You know, someone walks in there, so, you know, a Black person walks into a store, they get accused of not being able to afford an expensive product or service. And, you know, people being declined certain services because of the color of their skin. Parents have to teach their children, parents teach their children how to protect themselves from the police, which is supposed to be there protecting those children. There's parents actually teaching, there's, you know, Black parents teaching their kids how to protect themselves from the police. So you know, the police must stop this brutality and this violence and this so-called partition between the so-called races, that one race is more superior than another race. You know, the white race is more supreme, more superior, more important than other so-called races. You know, it's time that America.
In all this, how you see the specifically, how particularly you see the Trump administration or Mr. President Trump's attitude towards the protests? Don't you think they have misjudged and miscalculated the situation, and that backfired on them?
I certainly do. Their response has been very cold and insensitive and misguided. This was a time to show empathy towards the people, to show they have showed, you know, their role has been very cold, very insensitive to the needs of the people, to what the people actually want. Again, people are fed up of this. Also, there was one thing I would like to mention here when you mentioned the Israeli tactics, the Israeli police's tactics. So you're right, that this is a tactic that is banned by many police departments. If we're looking at George Floyd's death, so these four officers, they have carried out a series of violation to policies. They have violated a series of policies in this incident, in George Floyd's incident, which turned fatal. They kept his face turned down towards the pavement while applying pressure to his chest, which has, you know, and it was even after he became immobilized, even after he was unconscious, that was still applied. Officer Chauvin kept his knee. He even pushed it further down. This move, the knee move, is actually banned in many police departments over there. The Minneapolis Police Department. So if you actually read their policies, so I would like to quote here that an officer can only use the conscious neck restraint if the subject is actively resisting or exhibiting aggression. And this is quite their policies. Neither resisting, neither was he showing aggression or violence, but this still took place. Even if you can clearly see, even though after all of this, after they carried out this brutal act, they've called the ambulance, but while they waited for the ambulance, they haven't taken any sort of measure themselves
But
to.
Khadija, moving towards our next question, if I may ask you, okay, how should you see how you see the role of Mr. President Trump in calming down the situation, and could there be any chances of a second wave of protests, as America hasn't seen this unrest and since you say civil war, because there are almost lockdown in 40 cities, and there are national guards deployed in the streets, and people are protesting against the regime, and they are coming very hard on the government. How you see how you see Trump has misjudged the situation?
How well, what I have to say is Trump and the Trump administration's role has been very shady. Before the Black Lives Movement started, the COVID pandemic started. Their role was very shady in the pandemic. This pandemic actually exposed their actual role. They lacked empathy. Like I said, they showed lack of interest in the lives of the people. Their responses are very cold and insensitive. I'm talking about COVID-19 or the Black Lives Matter movement. Both of them, it was always, all that was needed was a little empathy, a little encouragement towards humanity, and a little, just encouragement. If you're talking about COVID-19, just a little encouragement for the people. Morally, this pandemic is a time where it's very depressing and it's very upsetting. Something most generations have never come across. So overall, all that encouragement, that empathy, that interest has actually lacked in the lives of these people. The Trump administration has truly missed the point. That people are upset, that people are, they're furious, they're angry with everything that is going on. And George Floyd's death was just, it's just tipped them off. And if we're talking about the second wave of this protest, the Black Lives Movement protest, so it could happen. It could take place. For example, the excuse me, the Syrian unrest, the Syrian civil war that's got started by the police shooting a young 18-year-old boy, that actually started a revolution. Okay. So, the boy was killed and the revolution started from there. Now, even if in Floyd's case, if the officers are charged, that is just not enough for the people. It's not just Floyd. There has been many cases like these, many murders like these. People are just, it is just not enough for the people anymore. It is very crucial to say that when people, anarchy and unrest happens when people have nothing else to lose. And, people are feeling that they're at that point in time where they have nothing else to lose. When people have no work, they have lack of employment, they have lack of housing, they have lack of social security. They're unsure about the future of their children. That's when they want to go to each and every step to get what their rights are, to secure the future of their children. To it's just not enough. It's just not enough to say that there's the protest is about Black Lives Matter, but all lives matter. And it's just the segregation of this races, race 1, race 2, race 3, race 4. That's not how it is. It's just one race. It's just human race. And you know, the so-called privileged need to understand this. You know, that's all the
So,
people want. Just race of
coming
humanity.
back to the end, with my last question, I'm gonna ask you about that. As it seems in this all period of unrest, uh, it seems that America is not gonna stay the same as the only global power has that has ruled the world and have carried on their policies and imposed their agendas on the other countries. How would you see? Just give us a sense of future possibilities and its implications, particularly for the Americans and generally for the globe. How you see the things will change and the implications would be for the others.
In with reference to future sense, things are already changing. Things have already changed. If people have been reminded once again that the American dream does not exist. This was something American dream did not exist for people of color since a long time, and it's taking that part for the white, for people of the white so-called race as well. You know, people in America are really angry. People in America are really upset with administrative policies, with police brutality, with this injustice between the races, and this racism, with this widespread racism as well. You know, brutality of the police and the insensitive behavior of the Trump administration, they have driven America to this point, where implication could really be far-reaching, not just for America but for the globe as well. You know, uh, America is a strong power. It's going to have far-reaching effects all over the
How
globe. You know, in America,
if I may ask you particularly how you see the impact of this unrest on the global order.
so, you know, America is, especially with keeping COVID-19 here in the picture as well, America is never going to be the same. And, you know, there's going to be internal political rifts as well that could cost Trump in the elections as well. You know, it could also affect the union of the state of the United States of America. You know, people could demand a cut in defense budget. People could demand social security to secure and the secure future for their children, a safe and secure future for their children. And there may not be much choice left for America other than to meet the demands of their people. Speaking about globally, you know, the world is already seeing this Cold War between China and the United States of America. You know, the deep state is not going to have enough funding to carry out wars outside of America. So if China has actually proven itself, China has proven herself.
You.
So they will not have enough funding to carry out wars outside of America. We're talking about China. China has actually proven herself capable enough to cater for the needs of their people. They have actually, the way they have tackled the COVID-19 pandemic, you know, China has proven herself in all sense, whether it be socioeconomic, whether it be for, you know, the healthcare sector, whether it be for, you know, how they put travel restrictions. They have actually in an overall sense, they've actually proven themselves better than the United States in this whole scenario as well.
Thank you, Khadija, for having a very amazing conversation with us. Let me, if I conclude, if I summarize our discussion in 2-3 points. The first, it would be the first point we have perceived from your analysis is the protests are against the brutality of the people, brutality of the police, and insensitivity of the government. How the government has failed, how the American government has failed to deliver the basic necessities to their people and ensures human security to them. And secondly, it has America has lost her status as a global power, and the people are actually people have realized that America is losing her status of global power. And thirdly, as we are seeing as China, we are seeing China not necessarily replacing America, but China has show herself to the world community that she is capable of taking care of world's problem. So we'll see how this all thing will turn up, because it's very hard and under these circumstances to predict about the future. How will the coming days will look like, from where the sun will rise and where it will set. It's very difficult to say, because the international regimes and international relations have seen a very cold time during this pandemic, in the eve of this pandemic. And so here today, I will say it's over for today. See you next time with the next guest and with the next issue. Thank you so much. Allah Hafiz.
Welcome, Hamad. Take care and keep your social distancing. Wash your hands. Stay safe.